now move on to the swearing in of our new senators. So will all of our new senators please rise, raise your right hand, and repeat after me. And if you would stand up, thank you. I state your full name. Do affirm before these assembled witnesses.
Do affirm before these assembled witnesses.
That to the best of my ability.
That to the best of my ability.
I will faithfully perform the duties.
I will faithfully perform the duties.
Of my office.
Of my office.
And that I will support and uphold.
And I will support and uphold.
The Constitution and bylaws of the ASUW.
The Constitution and the bylaws of the ASUW.
Congratulations, Senators. The open forum. Is there anyone in the gallery this evening that would like to address the Senate? At this time, we'll now move on to our special events. So I'd like to welcome up the Acting President of the University of Wyoming, Dr. Theobald.
Well, thank you for having me here tonight. I was asked to talk about what the major projects we've been working on this year that seem to have the most influence on students. And then I'll answer any questions you've got the rest of the time we have. I'd say there are the three major foci of what we've been working on. One is about 4 years ago there was a budget cut here, which dramatically cut the number of faculty and staff. We lost about 300 personnel here. It was a $42 million budget cut. So this year we had the largest recruiting of faculty that we have had in the last decade. We're doing 55 faculty searches. And why increasing the number of faculty, I would argue, would be important. Obviously, greater availability of classes, more access to faculty, and obviously that's what you come to college for, is the wonderful faculty that are here. So I'd say the push, next year we'll have about the same number. The budget we're putting together right now, somewhere between 50 and 60 faculty again next year. So the goal is to rebuild the faculty back to the size that existed here 4 years ago. Second is we have really tried to hold down costs. I know through the fee book committee, we worked with a lot of ASUW members. They actually take the lead on this, of trying to keep fees as low as possible. And I think the average is, again, relatively low to what it's been in past years. I spent a lot of time fundraising. That's a big part of this job. And we have raised about $3 million for financial aid. So and we'll raise about $60 million this year. And a lot, focus on financial aid to the extent possible, graduate fellowships and so on. So I'd say affordability is second. And the third is the Student Success Initiative. We've been doing a lot of work there in reconceptualizing what advising should be. The greatest predictor of how much debt you will graduate with is how long it takes you to graduate. Not surprising. The individuals who graduated in 8 semesters, the majority of them graduated with 0 debt here. However, those people who stayed 9, 10, 11, 12 semesters, that's when you start getting into either you have to borrow money to stay in school, or you have to stop out, earn money to come back. That's neither of those is the outcome we seek. So really tried to work on something we will roll out to the trustees in March with our more advisors being used differently and so on. So I'd say faculty for academic excellence, holding down costs for affordability, and then student success, making sure we do everything we can to get you out with as good an education as possible in 8 semesters. Any questions on that or anything else that's going on in this university? I'm also the CFO while I'm the president, so I know a lot about the budgets here. And right now I'm filling in as the provost, so they're trying to find something I can do well. I don't know if I find them.
Any questions for the president? Senator Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, President Theobald, for being here tonight.
Sure.
My question is about the recent $500,000 in cryptocurrency the university just recently got.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know where that's going to end up going toward? if that's going to be going towards raising more funds for more faculty?
No, because it's cash. I mean, if you're going to hire people, you need ongoing funds. So if you were wanting to use that for, give you all the finance lesson here, I won't turn that into something, is you would have to put that into an endowment that then would generate 4%. So 4% of $500,000 is what, $20,000 a year? That wouldn't pay for a faculty member. So it'll go, the gift is to the College of Engineering. And we are going to create coursework in blockchain. And another part of it is simply the donor is very interested in basically the kind of faculty we hire, kind of things we teach. So we're going to be part of a network of universities. I mean, they have their labs at Edinburgh University in Scotland, MIT in Boston. So we'll be in a group of universities that they're working with. So I think it'll be more partnerships and coursework, not people.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Other questions for the president?
Well, thank you for having me. Have a great night. Stay warm. I think it's supposed to be 3 below.
At this time, we'll now move on to our RSO Funding Board requests. Senator Mulholland, you have the floor. Everybody good?
I move to allocate $7,686.40 to TWS Spring Break.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Senator Mulholland, you have the floor to relay any pertinent information from the funding board.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we heard this request yesterday. You should note that you got an updated budget. There was $600 removed, which is a little oversight with the budget. They counted the dates twice. So we removed the $600, which took them down to $7,686 number, and then we applied their outside funding, the $2,000, to the $3,600 food line item in that budget. And that's what we discussed in funding board. And with that, I would give the floor to any representative from the Wildlife Society.
Do you guys want us to go over that?
Yeah.
Might as well.
Thank you guys for having us tonight. My name is Andy Walker. This is Brendan Wilt. I'm the former president of the Wildlife Society, but I'm kind of planning this trip. And Brendan is our treasurer, so he's also dealing with the monies of the club. Do you guys have any questions for us?
Any questions for the RSO about this particular request? Senator, it's always said.
So I didn't get to read over it completely. I saw that you plan to hit multiple parks. How many parks were you planning to hit?
This year we'll be going to 5 national parks and then one state park and 1 national park.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the RSO? Senator Connor?
I guess this might be a question for the chairperson of RSO Funding Board. How many students are going to be attending this event?
According to the RSO 25.
And to the RSO now, do you have all 25 of those members within your RSO?
No, I would, if I had to spitball guess, I would say like 3/4 to a half are like regular attending members of the RSO, but like we opened it up to the ZOFIS listserv and like the Hob School, we shared it with them, so like it's a lot of just kind of similar interested students, but no, they're not all.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Senator Anthony?
Mr. Chair, what specifically are you planning to purchase within each of the days?
I believe that most of the daily expenses would be food. So aside from, I mean, like we would also factor in like the our like nighttime accommodations, whether that would be like Airbnb or like paying for campgrounds, but the bulk of that I think would be food.
Would there be any sort of like supplies? Like candy?
Not a lot. Most of the camping gear we already have, so it would be primarily food, I guess, like utensils and like camping related utensils, but like a majority.
Thank you. There are no more questions. BRC, you can go ahead and take a seat. Any more discussion or comments on this nomination or request? Excuse me. Seeing none, we'll now go ahead and take a standing vote. So all those in favor of approving $7,686.40 for the TWS Spring Break event, please stand. Thank you. Please be seated. All those opposed? And abstentions? With a unanimous vote of 22-0 to 0, the money has been approved. We will now move on to our nomination of our Judicial Council nomination. So while we wait for the President and our nominee to get set up, I would entertain a motion. I would entertain a motion to confirm Taryn Vermillion as the next Associate Justice on the Judicial Council.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. This nomination is now open for discussion. Mr. President, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Taryn is a first-year student from Rhode Island. She is studying computer engineering with a minor in computer science as well as a minor in honors. She's an active member in Kappa Kappa Gamma and served on the Fraternal Standards Board as her chapter's representative. Before moving to Laramie, Taryn served on the executive board for her community college, student government as the director of public relations, and then as the president. And I will now yield the floor to Taryn.
Hi everyone, thank you all for having me tonight. So, as the president was just saying, last year when I lived in Rhode Island and I attended my local community college, I worked with the student government there. For my first semester, I was the director of public relations and then moved on next semester to be the president of the student government. During my time, I actually helped with building our judiciary board, so I have experience with that. And I've also heard that the Judiciary Council here needs a little bit of help with rebuilding, rewriting bylaws, so I think that that prior experience will help me a lot with that. As well as that, I'm just really interested in student government and continuing my career with that. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the nominee? As we deliberate, we'll ask you to step outside for just a moment. Discussion is now open on this nomination. Senator Insolmestead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have the highest respect for this candidate. I was earlier reading her application today, and someone who apparently knew her in the College of Business said that they would give her the highest recommendation. They said that she is one of the smartest people that they have ever met, and that they would be a great addition. After reading over her application, I think that she is extremely well suited for this position, and I cannot wait to confirm her myself. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ex officio from First Year Senate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Echoing the thoughts of the prior speaker, I think it's excellent that we have such a qualified applicant for today's seat. And furthermore, I think it's great that she's a first-year student and a transfer student and be able to bring valuable perspectives to the Judiciary Council. I strongly urge us all to confirm her. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Just one clarification. This is just to finish up this administration, so it would only be like a 2-month appointment, I guess, technically. But as always, associate justices are welcome to reapply. So just keep that in mind as well.
If there are no other comments on this nomination, we'll go ahead and take a standing vote. So all those in favor of confirming the Judicial Council nominee to be the next Associate Justice, please rise. Thank you. Please be seated. All those opposed and abstentions. So with a unanimous vote of 22-0 to 0, the nomination is confirmed. on the Theobald. All those in favor of taking the 5-minute recess, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, abstentions, motion carries. We'll be back at 7:26.
You're talking to me?
Yeah, I was I looked over their son, they're going to national parks, but they said that they're going to one, and then that they're going to go to others as well. So it's sort of that's what I was why don't we just go to one that there may be others. This one, then you can ask
Do you want? She can stay here. Yeah. We're gonna move into executive session really quickly. So do you mind turning off the recording for now, and just taking it out of the room for a sec, and then we'll come back and get you in when we move back into public. Yeah.
Same room, former Senator Tanner Gregg and I. And so now we're waiting for Kyle to draft up the paperwork. And I think former Senator Gregg is drafting a resolution as well. But once Kyle gets that signed off by the provost, another whole another 300 students will be on veteran priority or on priority registration status, which is a great development. And then our Chief of Legislative Affairs already discussed. We're working on getting those vacancies filled. We filled a couple more today. If there are no more questions, we will go to Advisor Lozano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Senators. Just two really quick things from me. I want to reiterate what Chief of Legislative Affairs Overland said about the budget. I know the Budget and Planning Committee put in a lot of really long hours and hard work on the budget, and it would be a testament to them if you could come prepared and ready to discuss that budget. Again, I think 9 hours, correct me if I'm wrong, on a Sunday. So commendable for them. They put a lot of hard work into it, so they deserve to have it looked over thoroughly. And lastly, I just wanted to announce that we have hired an assistant coordinator for Aztec. His name is Levi Wilbur. He will be starting March 9th. The reason he started a little bit late is he is coming from a different area on campus. So the HR process dictates that we have however many days they say, and then he can start. So hopefully we'll have him at the next Senate after that, so that he can introduce himself to you all. And we're really excited to have him on board and a fully staffed Aztec for the first time in almost 2 years. So with that, I'll take any questions you may have. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We'll now move on to ex officio reports, beginning with first year Senate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had a new senator sworn in today, but we still have 3 vacancies. So if you know any interested parties, please let them know. They can shoot me, Advisor Ward, or our Chair of Procedure, Senator Anderson, an email to get an application. Additionally, our textbook scholarship is open, and I believe closes on March 2nd. And we've had 5 applicants so far for that $250 scholarship to help some first-year students afford textbooks. If you know anyone who's interested, let them know. With only 5 applicants, their chances of getting it are pretty high, and who it's like an hour of work for $250, so that's a really good return on investment. That's about it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any fraternity council?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No report.
Thank you. United Multicultural Council?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This week is Thursday week. The Black Student Alliance is hosting a week of events, culminating with Diversity Ball this Saturday. If y'all are interested, it's from 6 to 9 at the UW Conference Center. And we will just be, we're working with PSA on those events that are happening this week and looking forward to future events.
pretty sure we got all the ex officios, and there's some left. We went to exec sessions, so just want to make sure we get this. Yeah, Senator Beck.
So just in a quick Residence Hall update, Residence Life and Dining Services has just finished hiring a new Assistant Director of Residence Life. His name is Devin Moss, and originally from Memphis, Tennessee. He is very incredibly well qualified for his position, and Residence Life and Dining Services is very, very fortunate to have him, and he will be starting next month on the 16th. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We'll now move on to committee reports, beginning with steering. So as I mentioned earlier, steering now has a new permanent time to accommodate some of the senators and first-year senators who could not make our initial committee time. So we're meeting at 8 o'clock every single Friday. The legislation deadline got pushed back a little bit. And unfortunately, apparently in the bylaws, it stipulates that we cannot meet by Zoom. So for all of our senators who had asked about that, it is an in-person meeting. We're going to have to make that work for the rest of the semester. And I do apologize. Advocacy, and then we looked at the bills that were submitted to us and made those student recommendations. Advocacy, diversity, and policy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We met and we came through recommendation on
Thank you. Budget and planning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Chief of Legislative Hoversland and Advisor Lozano Bolt stated, the third time's the charm. The budget's going through first reading tonight. And it'll also be passed next week, but please look through the budget. If you do have any concerns, Accountant Schaaf, Director of Finance Harold, and myself will be around our emails and phones and in the office in and out all week. So please do come talk to us. We met last week to hear an appeal. Budget and Planning did not approve the appeal though, so the budget was still set through. And we'll be meeting this week to go over the budget bill and the ASUW Senatorial Scholarship Bill. And if you are on budget and planning, please look out for your emails later tonight as we need to set up that meeting time for next week. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Program and institutional development.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Paige met today with Associate Vice Provost Ann Alexander and Brett Pickett from UW Casper to discuss switching the administrative side of the Bachelor of Applied Science degree program to Casper. This is currently an online program, and most of the students in the program are either housed in Casper or elsewhere in the state. So PID is going to write a resolution on this, and we'll have it to you in the coming weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. RSO Funding Board.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We met yesterday and we approved a $100 allocation for the graduate and undergraduate students in hydrology for a conference. We also approved a $450 allocation for African Side for another conference. And then we heard from the Wildlife Society, who spoke to you all tonight. We also discussed some possible changes to the Funding Board website with Chief of Staff Tom Montes that she said she'd be working on to get that information up to date and a little easier to use for our RSOs. And then we also discussed Senate Bill 2690, which we'll have a recommendation on later. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Student outreach and programming.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we met with AD&P again, and we had a super productive meeting involving Student Outreach Week. And next week we should have sign-up sheets going around, so we'll be on the lookout for those to help volunteer. And I'm going to try to print out whatever graphic we come up with for all the different events. We hope to get everyone super involved so we can outreach to the student body and kind of give them some information and also have some fun. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Calvary Count Committee.
It will say that one of the things that was discussed in the meeting was having senators do drop-ins in classes as a form of outreach for the census. So just to put that on all y'all's radar, that's something that the people working for the census have really wanted us as senators to play in this process.
And on that note, well, this is something we've been talking about for a while. So if there's a class that you possibly have the chance to, just for a couple minutes, go up and talk about the census, our Director of Governmental Affairs, Campbell, came up with some talking points that he'd be more than happy to provide to all of you. Just share those talking points with the class, why the census is important, especially in terms of getting funds for the Laramie community. We'd be more than happy to give you a service hour, and really make sure that our campus is educated so we can reach more students than just overtake them. So we appreciate that. Elections Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Elections Committee met last Wednesday to approve the 2020 Elections Code, which will be voted on tonight at the Senate. as far as this week goes, the elections committee will be tabling in the union all of next week, as well as running the information sessions for potential candidates that following week. If you know anybody who would like to run or is curious about running or has any interest in ASUW or anything like that, please send them our way next week, because we will be hopefully reaching out to a whole bunch of people to try to run for some seats. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We'll now move on to college contact reports, beginning with agriculture and natural resources.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Arts and sciences?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a few RSOs in Arts and Science who are trying to make food cabinets within the College of Arts and Science and in anthropology. So a few of us are working on that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. College of Business?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The College of Business and as well as the ASUW senators will be on the semester meeting sessions for student leadership meetings. So this is an opportunity for us to all brainstorm. They also bring speakers that, as well as the big job fairs next week, Wednesday, February 26th, from 10 to 3 in the evening.
Thank you. College of Education?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No report.
Engineering and applied sciences?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, no report.
College of Health Sciences? No, you're good. Thank you. College of Law?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No report.
And School of Energy Resources?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this week we have people from the Wyoming Association of Professional Landmen and American Association of Professional Landmen visiting, and they're going to give some presentations on the organizations as we're required to be a part of them in our degree plans. And then they are also going to conduct a lot of scholarship interviews. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to old business, beginning with Senate Bill 2690, adding ADA compliance logo to RSO marketing. Senator St. Green, will you please proceed with the second reading?
Whereas the purpose of the Associate Students of the University of Wyoming, ASUW student government is to serve our fellow students in the best manner possible, and therefore be enacted by the Associate Students of the University of Wyoming, ASUW student government, that the ASUW finance policy be amended to reflect the changes in Addendum C, and therefore be it further enacted that upon passage, this bill will take effect at the beginning of fiscal year 2021.
Thank you. This bill is steered to advocacy, diversity, and policy. Can you please have your committee recommendations, Senator Titus? Thank you. This bill is also steered to RSO Funding Board. Can you have your committee recommendations, Senator Mulhall?
Recommended to pass with
Thank you. Is there a motion on the floor to pass Senate Bill 2690?
So moved.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Discussion is now open on the floor. Senator Titus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The amendments that you all received were amendments that I actually brought up to Senator Welch to bring the funding board. The more I had time to think about this and actually comb through the finance policy, which is actually documented, I was under the impression that the ADA compliance logo was already required, and I found out that it actually was. So if you go down to the addendum, so now it includes section 310, when before it only included section 311, because you'll see that section that we added actually says tickets and accessibility, and then there's that final subsection number 4 that included just a small statement: RSOs must include any advertisements, the means by which a potential attendee must accommodations. So these amendments, I think, just will help facilitate the clarity of the finance policy, remove redundancy, and also if we reference the strategic plan, there are also some things that we should be working towards as administration, as a Senate body, including incorporating DSS approval. So I think this will make room to make a whole new section titled accessibility. I think it's a little shameful that it kind of just got lumped in with tickets, and it's only one subsection. So those are my main points for why I suggested these amendments. That's all.
Thank you. Senator Mulhall?
Thank you. Sorry.
Point of order, there was no second on the.
Thank you. That was my fault. Sorry. I was confused because I thought ADP actually made the amendments, but we did talk about it in planning board, and we agreed with them. So yeah, no worries. We're all good. So I'll go ahead and move to amend Senate Bill 2690 as outlined in the amendments.
It's been properly moved and seconded. We are now in discussion of the amendments.
Chair, so we did discuss these amendments in Funding Board, and Funding Board did agree it makes sense to move that piece from where it was to the new placement in the addendum. And we agreed overall with the rest of the amendments. We have one additional amendment that I will make in a moment. But yeah, this just makes sense. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any more discussion on this amendment to the bill? Okay, seeing none, we'll now go ahead and take a vote. So all those in favor of the proposed amendment that you all have in front of you, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, abstentions, and the amendment carries. We're now back on discussion of the bill as a whole. Senator Mulhall, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now I'll move to amend the bill by changing the logo in addendum B to have the disability support services phone number listed within the logo and for the statement rather than the ASUW, which that number is 76630. So replacing that number for ASUW's phone number in the logo.
Thank you. The amendment's been properly moved and seconded. We're now on discussion of the amendments. Senator Mulhall, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So overall, Funding Board, again, liked this legislation and liked the amendments, but felt that it would be better to list disability support services on the logo so that students could contact them directly. So that one, if a student doesn't feel comfortable kind of talking to another student about that, they're not put in that situation. And two, we're not in a situation where we're just like transferring students to another place once they call us. So just making it easier on that individual student. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Just a quick point of order for our new senators. A lot of times what we do when we're debating legislation is we screen share via Zoom. So any of the amendments, as well as the legislation as a whole that we look at, is on Zoom, so just for future reference. And for tonight, if you want to look at your neighbors, hopefully we'll help you out. Is there any more discussion on this amendment? Senator Bradon?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I moved to amend the amendment to say that it should contact disability support services at the listed.
The amendments are properly moved and seconded. We're now on discussion of that amendment. Senator Bradon, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just think it makes more sense if we're going to send them to disability support services that it actually says that's who they're contacting, not ASUW. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Mulhall?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, my bad. I was supposed to say that, so thank you for clarifying, make sure that we changed it. But yes, that was the overall plan.
Thank you. Any more discussion on this amendment to the amendment? Seeing none, we'll now go take a voice vote. So all those in favor of approving this amendment, the amendment, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, abstentions, carries. We're now back on discussion of the amendment to the bill as a whole. Senator Mulhall, you have the floor. Any more discussion on this amendment? Okay. Seeing none, we'll now take a voice vote. All those in favor of this amendment to the bill, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed and abstentions. The amendment carries. We're now back on discussion of the bill as a whole. As amended, Senator Mulhall, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To speak on the bill itself, not as committee chair, I would say overall, I'm in support of this legislation. I think it's a really important step. We did have that other piece about accessibility in there before, and then we kind of got off track because when we implemented the infraction system, we realized that we would have to essentially put every RSO on probation. And then since then, we haven't looked at it like we should be. So I think this legislation is really important in making sure that we're upholding ourselves to that standard and making sure that we're upholding a standard for the rest of the students to be able to enjoy events no matter what. So I'm really excited. I think this will give us a way to start enforcing it and a great usable logo that's going to help students overall. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any more discussion on this bill, Senator Milburn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's whenever there's an issue of business or anything, there's two things that any organization should look at, and that's effectiveness and efficiency. I can't speak today, sorry. But with this, adding this logo, it kind of, makes some of the other students of this university feel more acceptable and provides a efficient and effective channel for their helps and their needs whenever they find it necessary to also join in on the fun by adding this logo. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. First Year Senator Swilly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is just a general question for those of you who are RSO funding relations. I'll yield to anyone who can answer. But is there a means of ensuring that all RSOs are informed and aware of this new standard? Thank you.
Thank you. So I would say that the Director of RSO Relations does that. We currently have to make sure that all ASUW materials have the ASUW logo on them as well. So I'm sure that we'll just integrate this into that process for checking as well. So yeah, we'll make sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this bill? Seeing none, if there are no objections, we'll dispense with the third reading. And Senator St. Greg, will you please call the roll?
Senator Alger.
Yes or no on voting on the bill? Yes.
On solemnly said.
Aye.
Applegate.
Aye.
Brooks.
Aye.
Brown.
Aye.
Connor.
Aye.
Fitchy.
Aye.
Hedge.
Aye.
Hoffman.
Aye.
Horton.
Aye.
Milburn.
Aye.
Mulhall.
Aye.
Pearson.
Aye.
Rooney.
Aye.
Lozano.
Aye.
St. Marie. Aye. Titus.
Aye.
Trent.
Aye.
Vedder.
Aye.
Welsh.
Aye.
Woodward. And First Year Senator.
Aye.
Okay, with a unanimous vote of 22 to 0, Senate Bill 2690 is passed. With that, we'll now move on to new business, beginning with the approval of the 2020 Elections Code. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve this year's Elections Code.
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Discussion is now open on this approval. I would yield to the Chair of the Elections Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you're all aware how this process works. More or less, this doesn't get passed in legislation because it's our own internal code, but this is effectively, it is quite similar to the Elections Code from 2019. The Elections Commissioner and I went through, updated the dates, updated some information based on the creation of the Elections Committee and how some of that information could be, and changing some of how people can be reached as it goes for elections. Really, it was mainly just dates and names that were changed in the Elections Code. Nothing big was changed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion on the approval of the Elections Code for this year? Clarifying questions, comments? Senator Applegate?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a question. It said that it was open February 20th, but it's already open. Like, the link is active, so.
Point of clarification, there's also a special election going on at the moment, just looking for applicants for the vacant seats that are here right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no more questions on the approval of this year's Elections Code, we'll now proceed with a standing vote. So all those in favor of confirming the Elections Code, please rise. Any abstentions? Please be seated. And any opposed and any abstentions? With a unanimous vote of 22 to 0, this year's Elections Code has been approved. We'll now continue with Senate Bill 2692, revisions and update of senatorial scholarship. Senator St. Greg, will you please proceed with the first reading?
Whereas the purpose of the Associate Students in the University of Wyoming ASUW student government is to serve our fellow students in the best manner possible, and whereas the position of senator within ASUW has seen a decrease in both the number of students running for office and in the number of senators who serve their whole term, and whereas students are best served and represented when senators serve full terms and are able to invest in projects and legislation, and whereas senators are not currently compensated for meeting the basic requirements of their position and are only compensated upon completion of almost double their basic requirements, and whereas the legislative branch budget for fiscal year 2021 did not include funding for the continuation of the senatorial scholarship as outlined in the ASUW bylaws, which inherently places the responsibility on the legislative branch to determine how senators should be compensated, and whereas the tiered compensation system as described in Addendum A would provide enough incentive for senators to both meet the basic requirements of their position and and at the same time be incentivized to do more outreach to their constituents. And whereas the student government senators at peer institutions at all levels of government in the United States are vested with the power to change their own compensation at any time. And whereas no current member of the ASUW Senate will directly benefit from the passage of this bill, as no senator is guaranteed their seat next year, therefore be it enacted by the Associated Students of the University of Wyoming, ASUW Student Government, that the ASUW bylaws be amended as shown in Addendum A with changes going into effect at the beginning of fiscal year 2021.
Thank you. This bill has been dual steered to the Steering Committee and Advocacy, Diversity, and Policy, so please have your committee recommendations ready for next Tuesday, where this bill will be up for second and third reading. We'll now move on to Senate Bill 2693, ASUW Budget Act for fiscal year 2021. Senator St. Marie, will you please proceed with the first reading?
Whereas it is the duty of the Associated Students of the University of Wyoming, ASUW Student Government, to serve our fellow students in the best manner possible. And whereas the ASUW Student Government assesses a student fee to support ASUW programs, services, strategic partners, and recognized student organizations across campus. And whereas the ASUW Student Government works diligently to be fiscally responsible with fees that are assessed and collected in order to ensure the burden placed on fellow students is minimal, yet achieves the best impact. And whereas the ASUW Student Government continues to do its part in supporting the educational and inclusive aspects of campus life for students. And whereas the ASUW Student Government did recommend that all ASUW programs, services, and strategic partners ensure that their budgets reflect what the campus desires to uphold. And whereas the ASUW Student Government's budget and Planning Committee worked directly with each ASUW branch, program, service, and strategic partner to ensure their specific portion of the budget would maintain and increase the standards and expectations of quality. And whereas the ASUW Budget and Planning Committee continues to recommend an additional contingency fund to be added to the annual operating budget for an increased opportunity to support all ASUW programs, services, and strategic partners. Therefore, be enacted by the Associated Students of the University of Wyoming, ASUW Student Government of the ASUW fiscal year 2021 FY21 budget, its contingencies, and all parts thereof for FY 2021 will be allocated from the following sources: $832,106 from the ASUW student fee, $41,800 from the ASUW summer fee, $122,523 from the ASUW reserves, $100,000 from the ASUW special projects endowment, $72,400 from the ASUW scholarship endowment, $4,620 from the A.L. Lupton endowment, $500 from the ASUW discretionary fund, and therefore be it further enacted that the total budget allocated in FY21 be $1,173,449. I screwed that up again. As allocated in Addendum A, and therefore be it further enacted that the logistics of administering this budget, which has funding sources from the ASUW student fee, the ASUW summer fee, the ASUW reserve, the ASUW special projects endowment, the ASUW fiscal literacy endowment, the ASUW scholarship endowment, the ASUW A.L. Lupton endowment, and any other potential revenues as allocated in Addendum A be under the direction of the Dean of Students or designees and the Budget and Planning Committee of the University of Wyoming in accordance and congruity with the ASUW finance policy.
Thank you. So this bill, as was mentioned earlier, was steered to every single committee except steering. So if you have PID, Funding Board, or SOP, please have a committee recommendation ready for next Tuesday, where this bill will be up for second and third reading. With that, we'll now move on to announcements. Are there any announcements this evening? Ex officio from UMC.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The student jury art show is this Saturday. It's a really cool art show for anybody that wants to go out, like some of the visual art students and this Saturday. It's kind of adorable. It's a good time.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Okay, we'll now move on to processing. Senator Feather?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize to the whole student body if this is the wrong place to do this, but I just felt like this would probably be the best place to do this. And so I have a question towards Vice President Chestnut. And the question is in regards to a judge's decision to strike down previous attempts by the Board of Trustees to withhold information regarding the decision to fire President Nichols and not renew her contract. And so as student leaders in the community, I felt that it would be helpful for us to have a member of upper administration that often acts as a bridge between us and other members of administration. If there is any information that you would like to give us in how we can communicate with our constituents, as information will be coming out soon, presumably, if there's any recommendations that you would give to us in that field. I just want to take the opportunity to point that out to senators and you alike.
Sure.
Sorry for putting you on the spot.
No, that's okay. So, I guess what I would offer is that the strategy behind it was, right, so Lori Nichols departs the university. It doesn't feel like that came with a lot of information around it as designed, right? And so then there's a request for additional information, and ultimately the university's decision to not continue to challenge that information acquisition, I think, was in the spirit of transparency, saying we made some initial agreements, right? Her departure was based on, and this is public now, so I'm sharing this, right? Was based on her engagement with staff and faculty and what was received as mistreatment of those people, and that it had happened on enough occasions that it built a sufficient case for her not to be continued. And so that when I think the university, there's a lot of commentary around why we choose to do what we do and why we have so many presidents and why we don't share that information more publicly. And so I think at some point the university concludes, we feel like we manage this professionally initially, and we continue to do so professionally, but at some point we don't need to keep pursuing confidentiality to a vein that doesn't serve the institution or our community. And so I would be happy to talk about what other questions you might be getting around that or other thoughts you have around that. But ultimately, at some point, I think there's consensus, like it feels okay that people might have a better sense of what happened there and why we are currently with an interim in a search process. Does that offer a little bit?
Yeah, thank you
Okay.
so much. I just wanted to start a dialogue
Yeah.
among our different groups about it as we have questions. I've had questions about it, so I felt that it was important to bring up.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you, Chestnut. I have something. So I was just going to say, I really appreciate the debate today. We had a lot of senators speak and provide their viewpoints on the issues, on a variety of the things that we talked about today. I was a little disappointed that we didn't have questions for the president. It was why I stressed to all of you for the past couple weeks that he would be here, and taking time out of his busy schedule to come talk to us. He kept his remarks pretty short so we could, engage with all of you as student leaders on this campus and answer any of your questions. I was a little disappointed we only had one. So I really hope that, as many times as you've heard about the budget tonight, making sure we're thorough and looking at that, and coming with questions and clarifying questions next week, making sure that it's, we're being good fiduciaries of the student fee money that we have. So I would just hope that next week we are actually cognizant of that and making sure we are thorough with anything that we have to offer to this table, because all of us have something to contribute. So I hope that we keep that in mind for the budget especially, as it's one of the biggest things we do all year. So keep that in mind. Any other comments under processing? Seeing none, this meeting's adjourned.